Well, hello everyone. David, I want to thank you for inviting me to be part of your annual meeting, albeit a different type of annual meeting, but an annual meeting anyway. So with that, I'd like to say thanks for having me. You guys know you can get a hold of Kenny Marvin anytime you have a question or concern, and I encourage you to do that. So if I give you a quick update on Federated, mainly what we're seeing in the employee contact area, et cetera, but how can I not mention COVID? The impacts that's had on everybody from the way they work, where their employees are at, et cetera. I will say one thing is we have not seen a lot of claims out of COVID-19 for the workers' compensation. In fact, if anything, our workers' comp claims are down substantially from where they were a year ago. And that's because I think earlier in the year, a lot of linemen weren't out working and doing their normal routines. So while that's the case, we have been focusing, if we will, on the employee electrical contacts that we've been seeing. And you may remember, but from about 2009 to 2016, we were averaging about 23 employee contacts a year, and that ranged from a high of 31 down to about 21 in 1 year. And so we were not seeing a declining trend like we were seeing with the rest of our workers' comp claims. And so one of the things we did, we focused and worked with NRCA and the RESAP teams and statewide across the country to figure out what was going on. And what we found out was that when we looked at these contacts, 42.8% were because the linemen weren't wearing their PPE or their personal protective equipment. We had 47.6% of the time they were failing to apply their personal grounds and test the lines, which was causing a lot of accidents. And 9.5% were due to lack of appropriate cover-up. So when you add all that up, that's 99.9% of our employee contacts were things that could have been very easily prevented, things that our guys have been trained. So with that, NRCA and Federated got together and we launched the Commitment to Zero campaign. And as of recently, we've had 584 cooperatives make that commitment, which is very important. It's one of the good things. One of the things that we saw when we were doing a lot of this is that maybe tailgates weren't always being done before the job. And so Federated came out with the Safe app, and I hope a lot of you guys are using that or at least looked at it or using some other form of an app. But it's great for your tailgate sessions to get that job briefing done. There's other functionality in it, whether it be job site observation, forms, and other things you can do with vehicles, et cetera. So it's a good thing. One of the things that one of the CEOs pointed out to me was he went back after hearing this at some point in time and asked his operation managers, are we doing tailgates even during outages? And the comment back was, well, of course we are. Well, then one thing he started noticing, he added himself to the distribution list of the tailgates, of the job briefings. And what he found out was he would get notification of an outage in the evening, but there would be no tailgate turned into him electronically. So he very quickly figured out that they weren't always doing the tailgate. So it's one thing if you want your guys doing it, maybe a good tool to get that done. So in the more recent years, since we've launched Commitment to Zero, we've seen some success with the Commitment to Zero. Instead of averaging 23 employee contacts a year, we're now averaging about 15 or 16 a year. The one negative behind that is for 2020, we've already had 16. And the increased numbers, I don't really know what's behind it. Maybe it's a lack of focus, lack of concentration due to concerns about COVID and issues back home, et cetera. But one area we have seen a bigger decrease is in that earlier time period, we were averaging about 9 serious injuries or fatalities in a given year. And the last several years, we've seen about an average of 4 of these serious injuries and only 1 fatality a year. So better numbers, but still not that zero we're targeting. So far for this year, we've only had 1 serious injury, and unfortunately that was a fatality. And one of the things that jumped out at me when we started looking at this last 3 or 4 years is that pretty much almost all the serious injuries and fatalities are coming during outage and restoration work. And that's probably just due to the linemen having their normal, get it done, get it wrapped up, and get the lights back on. So maybe encourage them to slow down a little bit. And even if you're not going to make the commitment to zero and be part of that group, make sure you follow or have your linemen follow the 4 life-saving rules that we've come up with. And that is make sure you're using your gloves and sleeves. Make sure you apply the proper insulating materials. use proper clearances, and be sure to test the lines and apply those personal grounds. Last thing we want to do is see anybody else getting hurt or killed. So that's what we're seeing from the workers' comp side of things, if you will. The rest of the stuff has been going pretty good for Federated. Earlier this year, the board approved allocation of $24 million of patronage capital back to everybody. And then we retired $7.8 million in March of that patronage capital. During June, at our May board meeting, we decided to retire another $6.6 million, which is a little unusual for us, but the idea was to help get more money back into our members' hands to help them with unexpected expenses, et cetera. So when you look at Federated, since we converted to reciprocal exchange or became a cooperative, if you will, we've allocated over $337 million back to our members across the country. And of that, we've retired over $163 million in cash, including those payments we made last June. So my goal is to make sure we get the money back in your hands where you can do a lot of good with it. And now with that, as we get ready to wrap up, if you will, this is David's favorite part of the meeting. It's a situation that's been happening at Federated ever since we were formed back in 1959, and that is we take a portion of the premiums paid in each state and return to the statewide to help fund safety and loss prevention activities. And so normally I'd be handing David a check right now for $150,256, but instead we put it in the mail. So David, I hope you got it. Maybe your ballot got there too, I don't know. But anyway, so with that, thanks a lot for everything, for the time, and thoroughly enjoy it. So everybody be safe and stay healthy.